Welcome to the Technical Writing Success Video Overview by Kurt Robbins. Today, we're taking a step back from technical writing and documentation to explore the history and evolution of Halloween.
Halloween is pretty wild, isn't it? I mean, think about it. It's a night all about playful fear and spooky fun, but it's also a sacred, ancient tradition. And on top of all that, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. How do all those things even fit together?
We all know the drill, right? Candy, crazy costumes, haunted houses. But have you ever stopped to think about where it all actually came from? Well, that's what we're going to do. Let's take a journey back in time, and I mean way back, over 2,000 years, to uncover the true story.
Our story doesn't start with plastic pumpkins and candy corn. Nope. It begins with the ancient Celts in places like Ireland and Scotland more than 2,000 years ago. And it all revolves around one foundational festival that was the key to, well, pretty much everything.
That festival was called Samhain, and by the way, it's pronounced Samhain. For the Celts, this was a massive deal. It was basically their New Year's Eve. It marked the end of the harvest and the start of the long, dark winter, a time they really associated with death. So you can imagine, this was a super important and kind of heavy moment of transition.
Now here's the really fascinating and spooky part. The Celts believed that on this one night, the boundary between our world and the spirit world became paper thin. It was like a door just swung open. This was a mixed bag, you know? It meant friendly spirits of ancestors could pop by for a visit, but it also meant that some not-so-friendly spirits and ghosts could cross over too, and they were genuinely terrified of that.
So how do they protect themselves from these darker entities? They lit huge bonfires. The Celtic priests, known as the Druids, would build these enormous, sacred fires. The whole community would gather around and burn crops and animals as sacrifices. The whole point was to try and ward off evil and keep their gods happy.
And this brings us right to the origin of Halloween costumes. The Celts would wear these outfits made of animal heads and skins, but it wasn't for fun or a party, it was for protection. The idea was to disguise themselves so that any of those nasty spirits wandering around wouldn't recognize them as human and would just leave them alone. Pretty clever, huh?
All right, so fast forward a few centuries. As Christianity started spreading, the church ran into these really powerful pagan traditions like Samhain. Instead of trying to stamp it out completely, they chose a much smarter strategy. They just decided to absorb it.
And you can see on this timeline, it was a very deliberate process. First, you have the Celts celebrating Samhain for centuries. Then, in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III moves All Saints' Day to November 1st, putting it directly on top of the old festival. A couple centuries after that, they added All Souls' Day on November 2nd, creating this new 3-day Christian observance.
It was basically a strategic rebranding. The pagan night of Samhain on October 31st became known as All Hallows' Eve, because hallow means holy. So it was now just the evening before the new Christian feast of All Hallows' Day. The themes of honoring the dead were still there, just repackaged.
And, of course, you know how language works. Over time, people saying All Hallows' Eve just started slurring it together. Eventually, it got shortened and smushed into the name we all know today, Halloween.
The holiday took its next big leap when it crossed the Atlantic Ocean. The version of Halloween that we celebrate today really started to take shape in the 19th century with the arrival of Irish and Scottish immigrants in America.
These immigrants brought their old folk traditions with them. One was called guising, where people dressed up and would perform a little trick, like a song or a poem, in exchange for a treat. They also brought the idea of Mischief Night, which was based on that old belief that spirits would cause chaos on Halloween.
But here's the thing. In the new big cities of America, this tradition kind of got out of hand. By the 1920s and 30s, Mischief Night wasn't about harmless little pranks anymore. It had escalated into serious vandalism and property damage, and it was becoming a real problem.
So, community leaders had to figure something out. They needed a way to rein in all the destruction. And their solution was actually a pretty brilliant piece of social engineering that would end up defining modern Halloween.
So here's how it went down. You had this big problem with vandalism. As a solution, communities started organizing safe, family-friendly events, things like parades and parties. And out of all that came the ultimate compromise, trick-or-treating. It was a way to channel all that chaotic energy into something organized, peaceful, and way less destructive.
And that phrase itself, trick or treat, was basically a polite threat. It meant, give us a little treat and we'll go away. If you don't, we might just play a trick on you. And most homeowners were more than happy to hand out some goodies to avoid getting their windows soaked up.
Now, the rise of trick-or-treating was put on pause for a bit during World War II because of sugar rationing. But after the war, Halloween just exploded, and it started its transformation into the commercial giant we know today.
It was really a perfect storm of factors. You had the baby boom, which meant millions of kids. You had the rise of suburbs, which were the perfect, safe places to go door to door. Television was showing everyone this ideal version of Halloween. And of course, the candy companies saw a golden opportunity.
And this is where things really got commercialized. Homemade treats like apples and nuts were replaced by mass-produced, individually wrapped candy. And the whole point of costumes changed. It wasn't about disguising yourself anymore. It was about impersonating your favorite characters from TV and the movies. Which brings us to today. Halloween is an absolute behemoth. In the US alone, people spend over $10 billion on it every year. And as those baby boomers grew up, they didn't want to give up the fun. So they started throwing adult costume parties, turning it into a holiday for literally all ages.
So in the end, Halloween has traveled full circle. A night that began with people wearing costumes to hide from spirits has completely transformed into a celebration where people wear costumes specifically to be seen by everyone. From an ancient, sacred ritual to a modern party, it's been one heck of a journey. Thank you for joining this special overview. To see more content, please subscribe to the Technical Writing Success YouTube channel. Liking, commenting, and sharing this video helps us reach a wider audience.